All right, in this video, we're going to be talking about the differences between a riddle and a joke, and also the influence of the hobbits on this story.
And many, many other things.
All right, welcome to the CodeX Cantina. I am Una.
And I am your train conductor, Crypto.
And he is also our new conductor for this book. So we've decided that Crypto is going to help lead the conversation in terms of everything. So let me turn it over to him, the man, the myth, the legend, the Crypto, to lead this discussion.
First, I want to say that I am enjoying the book again, but no,
nothing you did, dude. My cat just totally, what's that called where you fart and keep moving by? Like, he literally just laid this stink bomb on me.
Nice. Crop dusted you.
My cat crop dusted the shit out of me just now. Okay, keep going. Whew, sorry. If I'm crying, it's not because of, it's because of how beautiful job you're doing.
So I read this book first time when I was in high school, and I think that that's important to note because I'm having some different feelings reading it through this time, and I'm still enjoying it, but I'm realizing that this was written for a specific individual. So the first question I asked you real quick, when was the first time you read Wizard in Glass?
It was about 10 years ago, I want to say. But at the same time, when you ask me when was the last time I read whatever book, I'm probably just going to say 10 years ago. I don't know why, but that's my answer.
So this book came out in 1997, and I read it when it was brand new. I was 17 years old, and I think that something about reading it that time period in my life, it resonated with me because the majority of the stories we're going to talk about happens to Roland as a young man. And I think that's important to note. Overall, my opinion of the book is changing already. So I wanted to start off with that as kind of a, not a palate cleanser, but just a foreshadowing of, as I go through this one, I might be more negative than I originally anticipated being because I'm reading it with a fresh set of eyes and a whole new experience on life.
Let me say this. We kind of did two parts here. We did about 250 pages. We started from the beginning of the book, and for those of you that didn't know, we're going through part 2, chapter 5, is what this video segment's going to cover. So I'll say this. I still enjoyed the first part as much as I probably did the first time I read it. The Blayne finale, if you will. The second part, we're going to have to talk about at some point, and I don't know if this is the video that we're going to do, but we're going to have to talk about sexuality with Stephen King at some point. It's been in every single one of these books, and I just realized we've never covered it or really touched on it. So I don't know if today's the day we're going to tackle that, but at some point we need to dive into that a little bit more.
I think we have too many other subjects to maybe cover, and we don't want this video to go on forever. But I definitely think it's something that we'll bring up in part 2 of the video, and I think that we can make it a center point, and we can bring it back over and over and over again. But that's, something that we haven't discussed. So let's do real quick the summary of the book thus far. So this one, Wizard of Glass, picks up right as the third book ended. Like there's no interlude, there's no nothing. It just, boom, we're right here back on the train with Blayne, and they're riddling. And I think it was very interesting how they are writing Blayne and Eddie becomes the hero, right? Because you think, well, what did you tell me? What did you think was going to happen?
I originally thought it was going to be Samson's riddle from the Bible, because if you didn't know, that's a well-known riddle that is considered kind of unsolvable. The idea is that you had to have this information before the riddle in order to solve it. So I thought they were just going to use that to defeat Blayne.
And that's one of the plot holes that I don't like about that. I don't feel like is ever really answered is how does Blayne have all knowledge of all worlds? Even though he's a supercomputer, we have supercomputers, and do they know about other, I mean, this is an AI supercomputer, but even if we created an AI supercomputer, would they know about other dimensions and the information in those dimensions? How did Blayne obtain that information?
See, I took that as a central conceit, that you just had to assume in this battle, like the whole battles with Eddie, with Jake, with Roland, they all led through he has knowledge of all worlds. So we have to assume that he knows every riddle ever created in every dimension or universe. And he has knowledge of all texts once he solved Samson's riddle. So that was in the Bible. So therefore, he knows all texts. So you have to come up with something that is not in written text in any universe and has not been thought of in any universe is how they're going to have to beat him, really, right?
And I think that's really cool that Eddie becomes the hero, and it's through these oral sayings. It's not written text, and it's not logic-based, but it's these childish jokes that Eddie has learned and told and made up himself, and, you know, through growing up and living on, you know, the streets of New York as a kid, and he basically overloads Blayne because he can't process the idiocracy of it, I guess.
Why do you think he chose that way to defeat Blayne?
I thought it was very unique. I liked it. I liked that it showed the different strengths of each character and the limitations of their stat sheet.
Well, I think it was... I'm 100% sure he had this whole thing written, done, when he wrote The Wastelands and was just a dick and didn't publish it. And The Wastelands was an entire Lord of the Rings homage, if you will. And is this not basically the battle with Gollum at the end of The Hobbit, where they're having the riddle contest back and forth? And do you remember how what's his name?
Bilbo.
How Bilbo beats Gollum?
Yeah, he says, "What's in my pocket?"
And in Lord of the Rings, I liked it. I loved that battle. And I'm like, okay, that's not really a riddle, so that's not fair. But I didn't think about it too much. And I'm not saying Stephen King's is better, but I did spend, I think maybe because of this channel, more time thinking about it. And what I like about this is when I think about a joke, like what is a joke to you?
It is a riddle, because it is solvable. You could come up with the correct answer, but it's something that is illogical to stimulate humor and to make you laugh, because it's something you wouldn't expect to be the answer, which, and I guess itself is, you wouldn't expect Eddie, the jokester, to be the hero of this segment of the story.
Yeah, there's a lot of irony kind of at play there. And I think what you said is exactly how I would have described it, is a joke takes like a truth or like an expectation and then flips it on its head. It subverts the truth in a lot of people would call it a punchline way, where it kind of twists the truth on its head to make you realize an ironic thing a lot of times, right?
Or it's truthy truth. Like, it's super true. It's like, oh, that's so true, you know?
But I think you said it's a riddle, and I don't know if I agree with that. I feel like a riddle is a very specific structure. Right? Like a knock-knock joke has a structure, right? You have the knock-knock, you've got an answer. And then what you have to do is kind of flip that answer. Sometimes it's phonetic-based, sometimes it's meaning-based. But you kind of subvert the truth, a joke, at the end. Riddles are things that are meant to be solved. I don't know if jokes are meant to be solved. I think that belongs in the purview of the riddle land.
Okay. Well, I mean, I guess there's two different types of jokes then. And he said that there are different types of riddles, too. I mean, there are jokes that are questions, and there are jokes that are stories. And True. Eddie is asking joke questions, not telling joke stories.
Right, which are not solvable, right? If we have the central conceit that Blayne knows all riddles, then that doesn't mean it's true that Blayne knows all jokes. He may know jokes that are solvable, but he doesn't know jokes that aren't solvable and just subvert the truth, I think is some of the beauty of this Blayne battle, in my eyes, when I thought about it. And I kind of realized that's what the Hobbit scene was. Like, the riddle's supposed to be solvable. But what the Hobbit did is it did the Samson riddle to win. Not the Samson riddle from Judges, but it did a question where if you didn't have presupposition of what happened or what he did put in his pocket earlier, you'd never be able to figure it out. It would just be guesses.
Yeah, and I almost think that's where, like, Bilbo and Eddie are cheating.
That's exactly the point, that they're cheating. And that's what makes it so beautiful, because not only did Stephen King try to do an homage to the Bilbo situation, but then he deconstructs it, where he does the Samson riddle, but since it's in a text and anything that is askable, that could be solved, Blayne already knows the truth. So now I was sitting here the first time reading it where I was like, oh my gosh, how are they going to do this? And I kind of forgot that jokes were the answer, because those aren't solvable. You have to have presuppositional knowledge to be able to figure that out. And I think it's a lot more beautiful than I think people give it credit for. I get the overload thing, and the overload thing's been done before, but I think this is done in a unique way.
And I really like it. Now I like it. Actually, when I read it as a kid, I didn't. I was kind of angry because, of course, I want Roland to be the hero. He's the Superman of the story. And I wanted him to win, or Jake to kind of be his protege, because Jake's sort of his pseudo-son. And it being Eddie. And Eddie was one of my least favorite characters, even though he's growing on me, because I realize how funny he is, and how well he's written as well. I mean, they all really are. But I appreciate it a lot more now, not only because of our conversation, but because of how he goes about this.
We jumped straight into analysis. Sorry.
Yeah, well, we kind of did that. We it's fine. I'm leading the show. This is we went off the tracks. Oh, my dad joke.
I love it. I give you full credit for that one.
Thank you, sir. So then they beat him, they crash, they get out, and they see that they have... Jake sees a sign, and he realizes that it's a sign from his world, and that they've crossed over into another world. They don't know if it's Jake, Susanna, and Eddie's, but they know that they're in a new world, and they go start exploring this new world, and they realize that it is the world from The Stand. It is not Eddie, Susanna, and Jake's world, that they're actually in the Stand, which is kind of cool. And you've never read that book, right?
Correct. And the way we know it's The Stand is what? Because of the flu and because of Captain Tripp, or are there other hints besides those?
Yeah, so there's a few other hints. But yeah, though that's the main one, is the super flu, or Dr. Tripp's, as they call it in California, is the virus that kills the world in The Stand. Funny kind of thing here is they're on Blayne, which they called, they thought was Charlie, right? Mm-hmm. And he brings them to this world. Who brought on Armageddon? And I know I'm reaching a little bit here. The guy's name that releases the super virus is Charlie.
Huh.
So it's, I mean, it's probably nothing, but it's funny to me. And it's not funny. It's just, I don't know. I find it interesting that Stephen King, with like the greatest thesaurus ever in his brain, because he has the most amazing words, uses all these names again and again. And I don't feel like it's coincidence. It has to be on purpose, right?
He's pretty deliberate. As far as authors go, Stephen King is very deliberate with name selection.
Yeah, one of the most deliberate, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, so I tried picking up on little things ever since we've been reading him, and I feel like I'm getting smarter at reading stories, trying to pick up those little things of what does that mean? Why would an author do that? Mm-hmm. And I feel like you can draw a lot of conclusions out of giving names.
For sure.
All right, so they start exploring Topeka, and they get a new wheelchair. And that's another thing they realize, that it's not the right world, is that there are cars that they don't recognize. There's a burger place they don't recognize. And they hear the thinny for the very first time. So one of the ways I think of thinking of a thinny is the doors were gateways to the different dimensions. And they're like surgical. They're very precise. They can take you a specific when and where, right? Where the thinnies are like an injury to the universe, and things are bleeding all over the place. They're messy. Things are going in and out. There's no control. It's almost like an infection. And they're all scared. It makes this really create like wobbling noise that they describe very, very specifically, like I think of it kind of like someone playing a saw, like that. Yeah, something like that. And eventually this will lead Roland to start telling his story of him as a young man, and basically his first encounter with one of the thinnies, and what will happen from there. So that kind of takes us to like the first break in the book. This enters into the next story. They're walking along, and they're turnpiking, or basically traveling, as Eddie gives them a nickname for their traveling. And eventually Roland succumbs to the idea of telling his story as a young man, and it transitions back to when he was a young boy. We get a little glimpse of him losing his virginity. Again, more a little sexuality there. And his father basically coming out and saying, yeah, I know your mom is cheating on me, but we have to be smart about this because of this guy is the ultimate bad guy. So he sends his son away, and then it's kind of jarring the way the story like just boom throws you right into the witch and Susanna, right? And I didn't like how that was kind of done.
For how slow and how much stuff didn't happen, particularly like when she was like walking with Will Dearborn, I'm surprised that you were just so brashly thrown into the situation with how slow it unfolded.
Yeah, so we get Susanna basically is going to the witch as basically like a medical checkup that she's still a virgin because she is selling her womb to the local lord to get back her family's land and horses. And so she's going to try to bear him a son. So she's gone to the witch because he wants a virgin that can bear him a son. And she is out on a walk, and she meets Will Dearborn. Do we want to spoil that? I mean, I think it's kind of obvious, but...
No, people know at this point. That's Roland.
Yeah. So it's Roland, and he's using, a different name. And then he starts investigating the Thinny.
And then there's the Yule Ball.
I feel like the first half had so much more than the second half. It feels like a little bit of a lull here.
Well, there's like this awkward back and forth conversation of like, am I going to get on the horse? Am I going to walk? I'm an independent woman. Do I need help? Even like the back and forth with Rhea, the witch, when she's like standing up for herself, but at the same time she realized that she's being sold into a situation here that they're establishing Susan as this sexual object, but at the same time they're establishing individuality into her in a sense.
And I think you see the limitation of King's writing teenagers, writing women, and we kind of talked about it a little bit, and let's not get too much into it, but I think that he over-sexualizes women in his writing. Fair?
Yeah. Totally. I mean, look at the last book with what happened to Susanna Dean and the Demon. And compare that with the first book, with how descriptive he was with Roland and the Demon. Like, not even on the same level. Let's table this discussion, because I feel like we can probably go into this more. But I do want to talk about one thing, which is the Westworld vibe that I was really getting with this section.
Yeah, go ahead and walk me through it, because I've only watched like one episode of Westworld, and please don't rake me over in the comments. I was not a fan. I didn't get drawn in, so...
It's okay. It's actually very similar to this, that I think you might give it another shot. Now, you said episode, but this was also a Michael Crichton movie back in the day.
Oh, I didn't know that. Okay.
I will refer... I actually haven't seen it. I've only seen the first season. I haven't even seen the second season myself. But this gives me a really strong Westworld vibe. But what Westworld is...
You can spoil it. I don't care.
No.
I'll never watch.
This isn't spoiler. What Westworld is it's this fancy Wild Wild West scenario where they've got a bunch of, I'll call them androids out there that are programmed to behave certain ways. Just like an RPG, you can pay thousands of dollars to go to this amusement park and interact and live your fantasies in this world. You can kill the cyborgs or the androids or whatever. It's not going to hurt anyone. They're complete machinery, though they think they're real, right? And you go on these fantasies of whether it be like a bank robbery or saving a damsel in distress from a railroad. Like, you pay thousands of dollars and you can do whatever you want in this world, because...
So you can kill them, sleep with them, gamble, go crazy, right?
Yes, all of the above, exactly. And what happens is these cyborgs keep getting reset each day. They have to have their memory wiped when this happens.
And they become self-aware or something, right?
Well, they're always self-aware. They think they're real, if I remember correctly. But what happens is sometimes they've done this scenario so many different times, and usually it goes one way, sometimes it goes a little bit different. But the memory wipe, there's something funky going on where all of a sudden, like, they'll have flashbacks or visions of having done something like this before, or having done something similar, and the way it went bad this time, they know to do it differently next time. There's just a lot of just these weird flashbacks where it gives me that vibe when I'm reading this section of the book. Now, reminder, no spoilers in the comments below. I have only read up to this book, so I have no idea what happens in 5, 6, and 7. So I don't know where they're going with this, but you'll notice that there's a lot of like these moments in this book. Like in this section alone, we had Susanna had that vision of her head being ripped off, trying to go out the hatch of the train to kind of explore, right? Earlier in the previous book, in the Wasteland, she had that vision of when she was entering the town, like that she had been in that town before. Eddie has a vision about how to help. You know, he's kind of being the shaman. He's getting those visions of the ring, like, oh, this is the answer. This is what I need to do. This is all getting that Westworld vibe to me.
Yeah, and Jake's even made exact things. Like, I don't know how I know it. I just know it.
And then there's this quote from Roland. It is remarkable how human beings pitch their minds on love, yet it is constant from one level of the tower to the next, even in these degenerate days. So I'm sitting here trying to figure out what is going on. I don't think this is the Westworld story, right? I don't think they're androids and their memories being wiped and they have to do it all over again. But I'm trying to think about what this means in terms of the tower, in terms of the universes breaking down of, are there other universes where they're doing the same things, right? Because we saw Sitgo, we see all these references to Kansas, how the cars are different here, but we also have a Kansas Turnpike. So there's a lot of similarities between these universes and how we're getting shoved into the Stand universe right now. But we see how similar it is to Midworld or how it is to Jake's New York or Eddie's New York. There's something going on there where it's like their minds are melding with these other universes, or they're able to share information, or I don't know. I don't think they're androids and it's like being overwritten, but I get that vibe of there's this connection of being reset and doing this before or something like that.
I like it.
I mean, it kind of goes back to the previous talk we had about technology resetting man. I know you can't talk about it because you've read all 7 books. You know what's going to happen. But I want to kind of call that out because it's obviously becoming more pronounced. It's like we talked about. We saw it in Wastelands. We saw a little bit of it in Gunslinger. I don't know if I remember seeing that much in Drawing of 3, but we're seeing a lot of it here in this book.
Yeah, it's becoming more apparent.
Yeah, I want to keep my pulse on that as we go through this book, that this is clearly supposed to be a theme of some sort about man resetting or getting memories or sharing something from others.
I only had a couple more things, a couple other talking points. We've hit a couple of them. I know one that we'd kind of discussed before. I like how King gives everybody multiple faces. And we've seen this in all of his writings so far, that the villains have 2 names or they're portrayed 2 different ways. But now we're actually seeing, and I just thought about this the other day when we kind of talked about it, was that Roland now has 2 different kind of personas and names. So when he's Little Roland, he's Will Dearborn. What did you think about that?
I hadn't thought about it from the hero's perspective. But even in that, too, we're seeing the lover Roland, and we see why he's so disconnected in the present, too. So we have, like, David Quick, who's also TikTok man. Or is it Andrew Quick? David Quick? Andrew Quick?
David Quick.
David Quick. We have Blayne, who has also had the small Blayne, or even the mainframe. You can kind of view it as well. You've got the Man in Black, Martin Broadcloak, or any persons whose initials are RF. So there's something about how every character has 2 ways of presenting themselves. And that was the whole point of book 2, right? With Eddie being the heroin addict versus being sober, Odetta and Detta, Mort the psychopath killer versus Mort the CPA. This is very clearly a continuation of that. I'm kind of curious to see where he's going with that.
I wonder if he does it many in the other stories that he writes, because I know in I can't remember, but he's done this, I think, in other stories as well. Yeah, it seems like he does this 2 faces, 2 names, 2 views of somebody a lot. Yeah. I wonder what the purpose is, though. Like, what is the meaning behind it? That we're all 2-faced? We all have an id and an ego, or a good and a bad side?
Well, I mean, that was his point of book 2, but why is he continuing it here? I'm kind of interested to see where that goes. Well, all right, guys, thank you for checking out our video today. We do literature breakdowns all the time, not just on Stephen King, but we do a lot of other literature classics and such like that. Please consider subscribing if you'd like to check out more content like that. Una out.
Peace.